Thank you, Wynn. That was a great story. I got to give you a little bit of background information before I tell you the true story that I want to relate to you. My father was the commanding officer of the 461st. He took command of the 461st in October of 1943 out in Utah. He trained the 461st. He took the 461st almost immediately upon taking command. He took them out to Fresno, California to hammer field. He got off the plane out in Utah, looked around and said, I don't like this one. He turned around, got back on the plane, flew to Washington, came back a week later and said, pack your bags, we're going to Fresno. And he did. He took all of the group to Fresno. In January and February, they flew the southern route down to Brazil, across to Dakar, up to Libya, Marrakesh, Libya, and eventually into Italy, but it was January, February of 1944. My father went up and established Torretta Field, which is about 9 miles southwest of Cerignola. Today, if you go on Google Earth, you can spot the field because at the field, on the south side of the field, is a reservoir, good-sized reservoir. It used to be a gully when they were flying from Torretta Field. And today there's a reservoir there. If you can spot the reservoir, you just move straight north and there's the field. You can see the outline of the runways running from northwest to southeast. And if you're really good, you can spot a couple of hard stands where they park the planes. I have gone online and I've actually spotted the squadron areas, which were scattered out all over the area. I have found the headquarters building, and I've actually gotten pictures of what the headquarters building looks like today. At any rate, my father established the field, and during March of 1944, they were getting ready, taking the field and dividing it up and saying, okay, the 764th is over here, the 765th is over here, and all of this sort of stuff. He took his squadron commanders and flew over to the 376 bomb group and flew a mission with his squadron commanders before the 461st ever started flying missions. They started flying missions on April 2nd, 1944. My father flew 50 missions, and I can't say whether some of those were double credit or not, but he flew missions from April 2nd, 1944 until September 1944. Once he flew, I think it was 1 or 2 of the supply missions to France, he was rotated out, and the deputy commander took over the group. Now, he was the squadron, the group commander. But let me back up several years and tell you a story about him. Back in 1932, he was, by the way, a career officer. He went in 1927 and he retired in 1959, 32 years in. Okay. He was a full bird colonel during the time that he was the commander of the 461st. But back in 1932, he was in Manila in the Philippines. And he was flying a 2-seater open cockpit. I mean, talk about archaic, right? He was the pilot and the co-pilot behind him. What they didn't see, neither one of them saw this, there was another plane up above them with an instrument package hanging down on a cable. That instrument package broke through the canopy, knocked my father across the side of the head, knocked him out, knocked out the co-pilot behind him. And of course, the plane goes down. Co-pilot comes too. He assesses the situation, figuring my father is gone, and he bails out. Left my father in the plane. My father comes to, pulls the plane out of the dive, lands it, and passes out again. They put him in the hospital. He would happen to have been in the hospital at the same time that my oldest sister was born, 1932. They discovered that he had 3 inches of his skull missing right above his right ear. They wanted to put a plate in. What happens if they put a plate in your head? Somebody knows. Come on.
No more lies.
No more flying. You cannot fly with a plate in your head. He refused the plate. He finagled a way to get back on flying status that same year, 1932. He was on flying status to the day he retired in September of 1959. And he had a hole in his head, 3 inches of his skull missing, right above his right ear. I felt it in the 50s. So I know that it was there. When he was the commanding officer of the 461st, he was born back around 1904. So in 1944, he was 40 years old. He was an old man compared to you guys. He was the old man with a hole in his head. He also, people had difficulty with the name, Glanzberg. Seems perfectly natural to me. I don't know why anybody would have trouble with it. But he had gone out in March 1944, took one of his pilots, B-24, and in the middle of the night, the 2 of them took this B-24 off and flew over to a fighter base nearby. Middle of the night. They landed at the fighter base. My father jumps out. The pilot takes the B-24 back to Toretta Field. My father jumps into a P-40 and flies it back to Toretta Field. I hate to admit it, but my father stole a plane. Okay? I don't know if he had this prearranged or not, but he had a purpose in mind. He used that plane to shepherd the formations as they were heading out. You've got 7 planes in the formation. You've got the lead ship, deputy lead off that way, another one off here, one in the hole, one on either wing of that, and one tail end Charlie, that always got hit. But if those planes were in a nice tight formation, close in, you had 70 guns covering the sky, and the Germans couldn't get in. So he would go out as they were forming up, getting ready to go out on a mission. He would jump in his P-40 and get up there and fly around them, saying, "Get in there, get into a nice tight formation." See? What was that?
He said, "Suck it up."
Yes, exactly, suck it up. Okay? He probably saved more lives that way than anything else.
You
Okay?
is was, don't let me through.
Well, yes, exactly. If he could get between 2 planes in the formation, they bought drinks that night. Am I right? Okay? But I could go on with this, but he was a character with a hole in his head to the day he retired. He retired with 2 stars on his shoulder.
Wow.
He was really quite a guy. But I can tell you other stories offline. I won't take up any more time today.